What's up, everybody? This is Brian here to tell you about our podcast, Bingetown TV. Our hosts include 7 best friends with a love for all things television. We cover a range of genres with a focus on fantasy and sci-fi, but also dip our feet into drama, horror, comedy, and pretty much anything we think is good television. We use the traditional deep dive formula for new live shows that are released week to week, but our calling card is our Rooks and Vets and Pitchtown TV series. Rooks and Vets pairs 2 of our hosts that have seen a show with 2 of our hosts that have not seen a show. Pitchtown TV is when we have a special guest pitch us a show by having us watch the pilot and trying to convince us to watch the rest. If you're craving more content on some of your favorite TV shows, then you should listen to Bingetown TV. Find us on our website at bingetowntv.com, the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or wherever else you may find your podcast.
Everybody, and welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. This week we are talking about a movie that Kyle picked, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, and I'm gonna be totally honest, I could not for the life of me find a dubbed version of this. It wasn't on Tubi, it wasn't on Shudder, which, look, I'm not against reading, but every time I look down to start writing a note, I'd be like, I hope they're not saying anything important.
It was certainly not a factor I considered, which I should have, but
No, it's all right.
I have an Arrow Blu-ray of it, and I was like, oh, that means that Shudder has one, or like somebody has, whoever's streaming it has a dubbed version of it, not realizing that both Shudder and Tubi, our 2 favorites, did not help us out in this way. So Matt, you texted me. And at one point in time, I turned off the English dub and was just like, I'm going to stand in solidarity with Matt and watch the Italian version with English subtitles for 20 minutes. And then I stopped and then I changed it. So you just know that I care enough.
That much.
A little bit.
The other thing that I actually thought was wild was that for about 10 minutes, I was like, man, this dubbing is bad. I can barely even understand them. Because any time in the history of the world that I've put on a film that's not in English, usually the app is like, this guy doesn't normally watch stuff not in English. Let's pop those subtitles on there. But not Tubi. So I'm just sitting there. I'm like, why can't I understand anything these people are saying? No. And then I turned on the subtitles and was like, that would be it. That would be the reasoning.
Tubi's a cruel bitch, and I keep crawling back.
The thing is that do we really crawl back, or do we just know what would make good content? Because I don't actually go to Tubi. Well, okay, so one of us may go to Tubi and be like, I got a hankering for something on Tubi. And for me, and probably Matt.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, who's the one that we did a Patreon episode about their watch list on Tubi?
I have a certain number of interests, and Tubi just happens to fill a lot of that.
I like that you're basically just the lamest Liam Neeson from Taken.
I have a certain amount of things that I really like to do, or whatever the line is, and one of them is spend 2 hours watching an hour and a half movie because of ads on Tubi.
Yeah. I don't know who you are or where you are, but I have a very specific set of streaming sites.
I have a very specific list of things on Tubi to watch, and you're not on them.
I do like. I gotta say, I love the fact that Matt is sitting there thinking that streaming services are smart enough to know when he likes to have subtitles, because they don't work that way, buddy. You turn them on and they're there. Like, you may not notice them sometimes, but once you turn them on, they're on until you turn them off.
I didn't want to ruin the Santa Claus effect that Matt thought he had with streaming services.
For me, there's also the logic that like I just always have subtitles on everything else, so I don't even factor it in as a question.
Same
but it
here.
wasn't set
The
for
only
Tubi.
time the subtitles get turned off is when my wife decides that we're going to watch something together on a streaming service that I use for horror movie night.
How dare she?
Yeah, man.
How dare she want to spend time with her husband?
That's what happened to me. My wife turned off my Tubi subtitles.
That's going to
I just
tie in
wanna-
perfectly to my what did we watch? So great.
I want to get this out of the way up front. I don't have a beer for today, but it is my first Giallo pick, and I don't know how many Giallo picks have been on the show, so I just have to commemorate this moment with a little bit of JB. Just a little bit. There's no nips.
Oh no!
Like
I
a lot
didn't
of
mean
bit.
to pour half.
I
the
just
bottle
wanted
in.
the sound. The sound was there. I just wanted.
Well, if it makes you feel any
I
better,
don't want this.
I found these in my desk, some Swedish fish, and they're red, and I bet that there's 6 in it. Fuck, I ate one.
Oh no,
there
Scott.
it is.
But yeah, so this movie was fine. Like I bounce around on my feelings of Giallo, and you know, I've been doing the big re-listening to 50 episodes of Horror Movie Night to try to like gauge what goes into the best of for the past year. And I literally just listened to the episode where for Kyle's What Did I Watch? I misunderstood what he was saying at the time because he said, I watched The Red Queen Kills 7 times, and I was under the impression that 7 different times he watched a movie called The Red Queen Kills.
I've only watched this movie 3 times.
Yeah, you're
Kyle
like,
watches
I
the
was
Red
about
Queen
to-
Kills 7 times.
What
3
you
times.
said was, I watched The Red Queen Kills 7 times, and now I understand what I do like about Giallo. And I'm like, man, he watched a movie he didn't like 6 times, but that 7th time it unlocked it all.
It's lucky number 7, man. It just clicks.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start there. Apparently, this movie has a very special place in your heart as a film that made you start to understand a genre that you maybe weren't so thrilled about. So let's dive into that.
Yeah. I think that, you know, as a horror fan, a lot of times I think this is a generalization, but I think it's an appropriate one. Our first introduction into Giallo is Dario Argento, right?
Yeah.
And Dario Argento's Giallos are way more horror leaning in a lot of ways than other ones. And I didn't understand, you know, and then I've watched other Italian horror that may have Giallo elements, and I was like, I don't get this. Giallo was still sort of a foreign phrase to me because I entered through an Italian horror section, and this one feels more like it is a Italian Giallo film with horror elements. Like there's sort of a potential supernatural storyline that we're questioning, or that our protagonist is questioning, and the gore and the blood is still there and relevant, and it's not that mysterious. Like, it's mysterious, but not like a true mystery movie. And something just clicked with me where I was like, it felt like I saw the other entrance to where I arrived earlier on in my viewing.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? I was like, oh, other people get to this point of appreciating or enjoying these types of movies by entering through that door. And it just clicked with me. And I mean, look, this is probably my least favorite time that I watched it.
Because you're going to have to defend it?
Yes, yeah, because I'm like, oh, now I have to not just say that I liked it. We have to talk about it with 2 other people who I've now forced to watch this movie, not somebody who was just happened to be in my house and we were like having a fun time. It's like, no, these people were separate from me and they had to watch it, maybe with no English dubbing. Matt,
Yeah.
Scott, I don't know how you watched it.
Oh, I watched it on Tubi with no English dubbing. I didn't mind that
cool.
much.
Now I
It
feel
just took
real
me
bad.
2 days to finish it.
But I also don't think that's not it's not a not fun movie or not a not good movie. It's just particular.
I feel like if people did what I did, which was probably not the ideal way to do it, but I realized I'm going to have a rough time with this subtitles. So I'm going to read the wiki page page plot summary in its entirety first and
Yes.
then watch it, it was very easy to follow the beats. Because it was like, if I looked away, I'm still like, okay, I got it. This is this person. This is like what it's playing towards. And obviously I ruined the quote unquote twist, but it's also like a murder mystery from 1972 and there's only about 3 different twists that it could have possibly been anyway.
Correct.
So
correct.
It's not like I was like, oh, it was the devil. Like, you know, like it's like, okay, it's her sister. Got it.
It's funny that you spoiled it for yourself because I forgot again until maybe the last 15 minutes what had happened. I convinced myself that it was one person and fooled myself again. The Red Queen got me for a third time.
The Red Queen fools Kyle 3 times.
Three times. Yes.
I think that there's something interesting worth bringing up about what you're saying, though, with Giallo, because I think of something that Jonathan said on a very early episode of Geekscape where, you know, he said, like, if you're into geeky stuff, there's only a finite amount of hours and time that you can dedicate to being obsessed about a certain thing. So, like, someone might be crazy knowledgeable about, like, music and comic books, but clueless with video games because, like, that's not what they care about, and so on and so forth. And horror is such an expansive genre of subgenres that I think for a lot of people that becomes the same situation where, you know, Tom from the Facebook group is obviously someone who leans really hard into the Giallo stuff. So he's super knowledgeable about that. Miguel from Horrible Imaginings leans real hard into like kaiju and Hammer films. Like that is his bread and butter. Scott and I both really lean hard into like slasher films, and then, you know, Scott's into some stuff. I'm into some stuff where it's like I really like the big ass monster movies. You take me, you take a normal size alligator, and now he's a gigantic size alligator. I don't care how shitty it is. I'll put it on. I'll watch it.
He'll watch
way
it more
sooner
than 7
I'll
times.
watch this.
You're saying Mega Croc? Did you say? I'm sorry. Did you say Mega?
Yeah. Are you? Wait, hold on a second. You're telling me that there's a mega python and a Crocosaurus Rex, and they're gonna fight it out? Like, another thing that I noticed watching this movie, like you mentioned it too, you do get some of those stellar kills, man. That girl's head impaling on that fence.
That was
that. I mean, that made the whole movie worth watching to me.
Yeah.
Was that scene?
Yeah, and I want to say I didn't hate my watch. Like I know I messaged you guys. Like I don't specifically enjoy Giallo. I get it. Like I've always gotten it, and I'm not talking down to anyone, especially you, Kyle. I'm like I've already always understood like the point of it, but it's just not my thing. It's just not my thing. So like but I can appreciate it, and I appreciated this movie. It wasn't a difficult watch, even with the subtitles, and there was stuff for me to love in it. Like I thought that the cinematography was actually quite good. It was shaky cam before shaky cam. You know, like there was a lot of stuff that was very. I mean, 1972, 73, whenever it came out. You know, shaky cam. Yeah. People, you know, scream about that being a thing that happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. No, you know, like it was happening way before then. And I love the color scheme. I love the character design for the Red Queen. My only gripe would be, I knew that it wasn't going to be supernatural, but if it was supernatural, this movie would have just gotten like a whole extra star for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just
I wish they
preference.
had leaned a little bit more into that too. Like I was like, I mean, they did so much so much blatant exposition up front about a legend that I'm like, okay, like. And there's only one scene that it feels like it's potentially supernatural, and it's not the dream sequence. It's like immediately prior to that, there is a moment where she's in the castle and she sees the Red Queen pass by, and you're like, "Come on, like we should be doing that like 3 more times." You know, like let me really think that this legend has somehow come back. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why I picked it. I wanted to explore because I'm still exploring this genre and this era and this time frame or whatever, but I knew that this would be a good 1 foot in, 1 foot out for a horror movie night. I thought it would be like fun enough, and
There are some great
yeah.
lines in this movie, like
some great
hilarious
fucking
lines.
some great kills. Yeah, it's and they're always just dropped in there, and they're always almost always seem transitionally like in a scene.
When I just
Go
saw
Fly
the words
Kite is my favorite. Like just
one was like, "Are you up for a threesome?" was one of the ones that I saw up on the
Yes.
screen. I'm like, what is this movie?
Yeah.
I find that Giallo falls into the same category as something I said when we were talking about the Blood of the Mummy's Tomb with Hammer Films, is that I never necessarily dislike watching any of these movies at a given moment, but I don't know if I could do like multiple in a row.
Yeah.
And like I don't know how many I want to revisit, but like you said, Scott, like a lot of these, along with the Hammer Films, are gorgeously shot. Like, I would happily just have them on in the background with no sound, just as something to have on the TV when I walk through the room, because I'm sure that whatever I walk into is either going to look like beautiful set wise if it's like a Hammer movie, or it's going to just look stylistically interesting on the screen. Yeah. Now, that being said, if I muted it, I would have missed whatever the fuck this like sexy 70s dream song
music,
is.
The entire soundtrack is so good. The main theme is legitimately awesome.
It's so funny because it's like I watched that movie and I'm like, oh, that song's gonna be stuck in my head forever. And now that we're talking about it, I only watched it yesterday, but it's like I can't even hear it. I have to give a quick shout out to it's this guy Jimmy Gonzalez who does this. He directed a movie called The Red Man back in 2016, but he's a DJ and he does cinema mixes of. He did one about Video Nasties where he remixed the visuals of all the Video Nasties to their soundtracks. And he does one for Giallo. So he goes under the name Space Tunes, one word with a Z at the end. And he's introduced me to a lot of this stuff, just like gave me a list of things to watch by putting out those mixes. So, and he does one, I think that's all Giallo. And I believe that that's where I came across the Red Queen initially. And it was the scene where she's running down the hallway in this dream sequence in a school. Maybe it looks like it's a school. And it's just this long shot where she's running so far away from the camera towards the camera in this red cloak, cackling, or apparent like visual, like she looks like she's cackling as she's running. That sold me on this movie completely.
Yeah,
and it is. It's like there's so many beautiful shots. I think I want to start an Instagram account that's just Giallo 90s or Giallo. I can't say it. Giallo lingerie. I want to mix those two words together.
Giallo lingerie. I get. I can see it, but you're right. That is
visually it works. You can't say it.
It's a tongue twister.
Because anybody who sleeps in these fucking 90s that they show in these movies is
Francesca.
Bonkers.
What's her name?
Francisca. Yeah, or
whatever.
Yeah,
like all this shit. One. Like we sound so Midwest right now, even though you are East Coast. But the thing is that
I'll take it.
You could expand that to Hammer too, and there are so many hot 90s in there. Like, and it's so funny because
horror 90s, just fucking let's
Nightmares.
Just open it up.
You could have
Nightmares.
Ooh.
Cut this out, Matt. Don't let them hear this.
No, the thing is you have enough time between now and when this drops that you can at least sit on that you're fine.
I feel like we watch so many, even not purposely. I don't want to go seeking these things out necessarily. But
it's just if it happens, then you add it. Yeah,
it happens so often.
I love when I did not write down her name, but she's the girl who's trying to steal away.
It's Sybil Danning as Lulu.
Yeah,
Sybil. That's Sybil Danning.
Yeah, it is.
Which is absurd.
Yeah, I did not even recognize her.
She doesn't look like Sybil Danning.
No,
she doesn't look like the Sybil Danning.
Yeah. Give her 10 years. The thing is that she's like naked. She finds herself, or you find her naked, reclining on Walter. I don't know whatever his name is. His sofa, and his amazingly painted like sex den.
That scene is ridiculous.
Amazing.
Incredible.
It's so good. And that's not a set. They literally just filmed it in an apartment in 1972.
Yeah. That was for rent.
Yeah. So was she, because she says, I know some special tricks. Even the police know I'm an incredible nymphomaniac, which that's what I'm saying is even if there were no good deaths in it, that line alone is just perfection. It's so sleazy. It's so sleazy. And there's that whole scene where the one guy who's like a cuck because he can't get it up, I guess. He's like driving with her through the horrors section of the the park at night, and they all have like white
which is a
go-go
straight
boots
shot,
on.
well lit. Like
Yeah.
it's the most picturesque part of a park. Yeah,
It's very fitting that like Kyle, because the Patreon accompaniment to this is a movie that Kyle picked that one, and it's almost
that's
like
why
he
there's
gave
no
us-
water in my drink.
Yeah,
There's no water in my drink because of the Patreon account.
Yeah.
He gave us like 1972 sleaze and 2001 sleaze simultaneously, and one is way more wholesome than the other.
And I honestly think that the one that we're discussing right now is more wholesome.
Listen, I just can't fight the moonlight now.
That's true. Enough hints
Got
to
all
the
these
people.
shit, man.
I'm sorry. I'm
Go to the
sorry. Cut it
Patreon
out,
and
cut
listen.
it out.
Go to the Patreon and listen to us talk about it.
So the end of the movie has this big climactic scene where our protagonist, whose name I should remember, I don't remember now.
Kitty.
You picked this shit.
Kitty, thank you.
Kitty.
Kitty is locked in the mausoleum, which also has an access point to a dam, like a personal dam.
As
we
per
all
usual.
know, Giallo films all take place in luxurious mansions and incredible locations. But however, there's this dam and mausoleum connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. What happens is what Kitty is down there. And it's like all that I need to say is that there does not need to be this set piece where a mausoleum floods. We're already coming along to the twist of the whole story while Kitty is trapped in the well. And I'm like, we don't need this whole flooded set to exist in order to do this twist at the end. Yeah. And I just was watching there. I was just sitting there watching these rats come out of the walls to, like, you know, say that the water's coming, and then Kitty start freaking out, which she's been doing the whole movie. And I don't need her like up to her tits, of course, in water.
Yeah,
that's how
that's
it was
Italian
going to
for
work
you.
out anyway. They have to get the nipples hard before they get anything to happen, because that's the point. I'm just like, well, why spend the money on this part of the story when all you needed to do was twist it and not flood a mausoleum, not flood my basement
I
for
thought that
this.
You've seen enough Argento-esque Giallo,
I know,
or
I know.
Argento-esque.
They always
horror.
end up in a fucking
It's
room
all
that
wet.
costs yeah.
There's so much water. I just
There's a
didn't I
lot of
just
water.
like I was just talking about City of the Living Dead. Like there's so much water in that movie that doesn't
Oh,
need to be there.
that's a damp movie.
Yeah.
Like that's a fucking damp
Yeah,
movie.
there's a
You're
lot in
right.
the Beyond. There, I mean, pretty much
Yeah.
all three of the Mother trilogy,
The
especially
motherfucker trilogy. Yeah.
yeah, like Inferno is like half underwater, which is ironic because
That's true. That's true. No, you're right. There is a there.
didn't Argento do
maybe
Dark
there's a
Water too? And that movie is so wet.
Is that the one that takes place in a laundromat?
No, it takes place on an island. It's very Lovecraftian. It's on my Shudder watch list and on my long HMN list. It's just
Is there a movie that takes place in a laundromat? Shit.
My Bloody Valentine?
No, what's the I know what you're talking about. It's like
Dryer.
I think Robert Englund's in it, where it's like a killer laundromat machine.
What?
Oh, that's the Mangler.
Yeah, the
And
Mangler.
we
Oh,
need
the
to
Mangler. Fuck
yo,
yeah.
Carly and I quote the Mangler daily. Like there's this moment. Oh my god, never mind. We're gonna talk about the Mangler at some point. It's gonna be a pick. This is a teaser for the episode of Horror Movie Night that we'll watch. But Carly and I quote this line all the time. Ted Levine is on the phone or off the phone and immediately saying to the next person, he goes, "There's been another accident at the laundry." And the way that he does it is this Ted Levine bottom jaw to the side talk that he does, Buffalo Bill true talk that he does. And I wish Carly does it better than I. I'll record it for that episode. All right, we don't need to talk about the Mangler anymore.
Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out yknowpodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, yknowpodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
All right, Kyle, what is your double feature with the Red Queen kills 7 times?
It's actually a movie I've talked about on our What Did We Watch, and it's a movie called Madhouse, and it is also about sisters, or the idea of sisters, and a tormenting sister of maybe dead, maybe locked away, maybe somewhere else, tormenting a live sister who's trying to get their life back and just do their normal shit. And it is also put out, I believe, by Arrow. So like Arrow has a vibe. I have a vibe.
I was about to say you guys
Madhouse
are vibing.
and Madhouse and the Red Queen Kills 7 Times is a vibe. And I think they're both maybe on Night Flight, or at least one of them is on Night Flight. Both of them are on Shudder.
Not a
And
sponsor.
everything's on Tubi.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it all lives on Tubi.
Madhouse is English, so just know that.
Scott, I'll let you go next because I'm going to probably name drop a bunch while explaining my thought process.
I have two. I have one that I want that I would want to watch after Red Queen, and then I'm going to tell you the one that altruistically I need to mention just so that I can pump up our co-host. So I would watch Red Queen Kills 7 Times, and then I would watch Malignant. Not because I enjoyed Malignant, but rather because it is basically a supernatural giallo, and just the ending is so absurd that it makes up for how middle of the road this movie felt for me. It'd be a rough double feature. But
we'll get into it more in 8 years when
when we have
Malignant's
we'll
up for grabs.
absolutely be doing that has to be on the show in 10 years, 9 years.
time.
But the one that I wanted to mention, especially because it's Kyle's pick, which says so much about Kyle as a person and his vibe, is Let's Scare Jessica to Death, because they're both very wet, and Kyle made an amazing music video for a band, and I have completely lost the name of the band. You tell me.
It's an artist named Magana.
I probably would have butchered that anyway. It's a fantastic video that is it's not a beat by beat, but it's very heavily inspired by Let's Scare Jessica to Death. It's the most Kyle thing I've probably ever seen.
Well, thank you, and I fucking love that movie. Have you guys talked about?
We
that
talked
movie?
about it on Reddit Horror Club.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. I'm not sure it's a movie for this podcast, but I do like it a lot.
It's a-
and I
it's
love
a
that it will
great
pop
movie,
up every
though.
once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's too good for us.
It's too good. It's too good of a
100%.
movie.
Throughout the entire watching of this, I kept jumping to all these different ideas of what I could pick, because like the setting of the mansion / castle, whatever, with the paintings and everything, kind of reminded me of the Ghost of Mr. Chicken's like haunted house set at times.
Any excuse, right, man?
Then I was just bouncing through, like, I don't know, like I love like Blood and Lace. That's kind of a wild movie with an equally bizarre twist ending. And then I was thinking
Is it Blood and Lace or Blood and Black Lace?
there's the two
separate?
different ones.
Okay.
Right?
I don't know
I'm
anything.
trying to remember.
Tell me. Explain
I
to
think
me.
Blood and Lace. No, this is like a 70s exploitation film with someone with a hammer, where they're beating someone with a hammer. But
Is that on Shudder?
it might be, and it's like
If
an old
it's
man
not,
mask.
it's like
an old
something-
burnt man mask, but it's
Yeah.
I'm interested.
yeah. I've considered picking
Writing
it
it
for
down
no other reason
furiously.
than it's one of those movies where the ending is like the killer reveals himself in the most undramatic way possible, and then just monologues about why they
So
did
it's
it.
a
Like
Scooby-Doo episode.
it's 100% a Scooby-Doo ending.
Oh yes, there is Blood and Lace. It's 1971, and your boys at Scream Factory put that one.
Yep,
out,
that's
so
the one then. That's the one.
That's their vibe.
Then I also considered like Bay of Blood / Twitch of the Death Nerve. But what I ended up landing on is, if this is 1972 Italian sleaze, I want to put on 1974 American sleaze with Alice Sweet Alice.
Yes.
Which feels like a really good thematic matchup there.
Yeah. No, and also visually beautiful in a different way, in a
Yeah.
totally different way. Like they're different stylistically, but they both, the Venn diagram is great. You did it. That's wonderful.
All right, so Kyle, what have you watched or read or
Oh.
listened to that you want to talk about?
Yes. So Carly's a psychologist, and during her work day, she needs a little wind down. So she'll find articles and particularly BuzzFeed lists to just like chill the fuck out. And she came across a list, which is not a very chill list, but list nonetheless.
Comparatively.
About cult movies about cults that you may have not seen. And of course, I mean, I think we've all been on these lists before where we're like may have not seen. We've seen everything that they've come across.
Yeah.
This one was done by a former or a current editor of Fangoria, whose name escapes me now. So it was like, oh, okay, they got, the first one was Martha Mary Marlene, another name I forget, which is a great pick for a cult movie. But the one that we watched was a movie called Them That Follow from 2019, and it's a movie. It's more of a drama thriller about a Appalachian snake handling church, small community, like really tight knit community. It's got Olivia Colman in it. It has it's got this incredible cast, and it was done by 2 first-time directors, but it's really good. If anybody knows anything, it's got Walton Goggins as the lead preacher, and Walton Goggins plays both really great comedy and really great thriller and drama. Olivia Colman's in it. Jim Gaffigan's in it in a really wonderful dramatic role. And it's a small cast. It feels regional, like it does feel like Appalachia. It's a slow burn. It's dramatic. It's like there's no real twists or anything, but it's like you sort of see where everything's going and you're in the dread with the characters that are going on. It's really good if anybody's into religious horror or cult horror or sort of like outsider religion shit going on, especially here in America. It's solid. It's a really solid, well-made, independent thriller.
I will not be watching that, but I have a question for you. Have you guys watched The Invitation?
Yes.
Did you like it?
I liked it a lot. I think that Catherine Kutsami, if I'm saying that right, because she also did Jennifer's Body, and she's been doing really incredible
writing or directing
work. Directing.
It just is very slow burn. It came on Shudder TV, and I watched half of it, maybe 3/4 of it, before I was like, because I really wanted there to be like something to happen, and it didn't, and I was just like, I turned it off and went to sleep, and then I just read the wiki when I woke up. I feel like I probably should have seen it through to the end. Maybe I will, but religious horror, like cult horror, it just needs to be more bombastic.
Yeah, but I think that there's reason for you to not necessarily dig on it. But I think that The Invitation, The Invitation is one of those movies that is a whole piece. I think that oftentimes in horror, and maybe even on this podcast because of the particular movies that we gravitate towards, which again is not a problem, it's just what we dig, is that there are moments that we really like, and there are pieces of it that we really like, and there are pieces. That's the reason why people make a lot of horror movies, is because they have this idea that's a major piece, and then they have to
fit everything. That's
and
that's
I think that something with this movie, and even with Jennifer's Body and other, that's just specific to that filmmaker. But there are other pieces where it's like, well, this is a whole piece that like needs to exist minute for minute, start to finish. And you still might not have liked it, Scott. Like, that's what it is. But I think that like there are those types of movies that are like, this is a whole piece. But then there are people who like have that thought, and each minute doesn't matter, but they're trying to make each minute matter, and it's actually infuriating. It's like there's a pendulum swing that if you don't like land in the middle of that, it's really frustrating on either end.
Well, I think comparatively, I think about it sometimes in the tone of music, right? Like, let's think about music for a second. You've got like certain genres where you've got these songs where it's all about the big catchy chorus, or it's about like the ripper guitar solo. But then there's also this other world of like Sigur Rós, where it's like, oh no, it's just about creating this 10-minute soundscape that really has no peaks or valleys. It's just this consistent hum that like, I don't drive around and casually listen to Sigur Rós, but man, it was perfect studying music. You know what I mean? Like, it was like perfect music to like put on to like create that atmospheric hum that I wanted to like have a little bit of noise, but something that didn't distract. I've noticed from going to Fantastic Fest and festivals like that, you really get both sides of that, where it's like, you're either going to get the movie that's just like huge moments with stuff in between to fill those pieces, or you get those movies where it's just like kind of just there. Like, I will talk about something that is a very bombastic version of what we're kind of talking about, where it's like you have to watch it as a whole. There is no like highlight moment per se. You just have to take in the whole thing. But I'll go last. I want to pass this to Scott. Scott, what did you watch, read, discuss, or etc.?
So I have two things, and one is a quick one is a little bit longer. But I will try to be brief with both. So I mentioned earlier on, Kyle said something about like a $200,000 budget. I didn't check the budget for this movie, but a movie just came up on Shudder that seemed really interesting, and it had all 5-star reviews, and I was like, "Fuck, this has to be good." It was called A Ghost Waits.
Okay.
Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah.
It is
idea.
an ultra low budget film. It feels more like a stage play. It's kind of like a supernatural rom-com / drama. And it was written by the guy who plays the main male character. And it's about a guy who is kind of like a handyman fix-it guy for a rental property that people basically a ghost keeps pushing them out of it. And he meets the ghost. He's not scared of her, and then he kind of falls in love with her. And it's all about, like, he never fit in and doesn't like people, but he likes her, and she cares for him, but she has this responsibility because this house is hers, and so she's supposed to haunt it. It goes on too long. It's an hour and a half. I felt like it should have been a 40-minute short, but I thought that it was good. It was very good, and I loved a lot about it. I would recommend anybody watch it once if you are into character studies. I'm not usually into character studies, but I really liked it because I thought that character studies, I think, probably work best when they are very small scope. And I think that when you have a bigger budget, you can do more and you can have a bigger scope, and then I think you kind of lose the thread of a character study a little bit.
Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
That point?
Well, I mean, it's like when you have the option to spend more money, I think that it's too easy to forget that a character study really is like a one act. It's supposed to be a play. Like, it really, I think of character studies as plays. That's just personal opinion. I'm not saying that I know anything about it. Anyway, I really liked it for what it was, and it wasn't perfect, but I thought that it was an amazing first effort on an ultra low budget, probably the lowest budget full length film I've watched in years. But really, really well done. Great actors in it, and I recommend it. But the other thing is a massive, massive recommendation. The best book I have read in years is Ninth House, and I am going to butcher the name of the writer. She wrote the Shadow and Bone series, which actually became a Netflix series. She did she was doing YA. She did that YA stuff with Shadow and Bone, and then this is her first adult novel, and it's about this this young woman who is like an ex-drug addict who gets enlisted to be the kind of like the ghost police. I know that sounds really silly. It's not. It's done with coolness and gravitas and everything. But there at Yale there are 8 societies, like secret societies, and they all do different types of magic. One does glamours, another one writes contracts that are like binding, another one does they do prognostications where they look at the intestines of insane people, and then they like can manipulate the stock market, stuff like that. And then the Ninth House is the house that the main character works for, and they are basically like they watch over the other 8 houses, make sure that they're not getting into trouble and not hurting anybody. So she can see ghosts, but other stuff is happening. It's kind of like a murder mystery, but with a really cool magic system put in place. Like, the world building is incredible, but the way that the author explains the magical systems is just the most effortless, amazing, and it's perfect. It's like the most perfect system of magic I've ever read, because it isn't super fantasy, it's not super horror, and it's not super like Harry Potter, but it also kind of feels familiar in all those ways. But it's also, the scope is relatively small. It's just on Yale right now, on the campus of Yale, and again, like, it doesn't start out as like a murder mystery, but it really is kind of at its core a murder mystery. Super, super cool book. So Megan bought it on a whim. We went to Barnes & Noble like in November of last year, like 7-8 months ago. She picked it up when she was before a work trip last month. She burnt through it and she was like, I really want you to read it. I was like, I'll read it when you get done. And I'm almost done with it. And it's been 5 days and it's like a 400-page book. Like I am just, wow. I do not read like that anymore. I don't have the time, but like my guitars are gathering dust. Nothing is getting done because all I can do is just think about reading this book.
Love that.
Like I said, it's the best novel I've read in years. It's probably the best novel I've read since Annihilation. And the best novel I read before that was John Dies at the End, which was what, 10 years ago?
A long ass time ago.
So, I mean, like I have very rarefied tastes in what is a perfect book. And at this point, Ninth House is a perfect book.
Nice. Setting a high bar for me here. So the two
it's
things
by
I want to talk.
Lee Bardugo.
Yeah.
Where Carly works basically next to Yale, so we're oftentimes on Yale's campus. So
shit.
Okay,
let's not go to Matt's house. Let's just go to your house.
Come over here. We'll go explore.
So the two things I want to talk about, I went and saw The Northman, which was, here's the thing, it felt like you took all of the vibe of, say, a Game of Thrones and just consolidated it into a 2-hour movie where you're just following this character who is not a likable character. No one is likable in this movie, but I feel like that's the point, is that this character, from the time he was a child, saw something terrible happen to his family and has been driven by nothing beyond pure hatred and revenge. And you're like sitting there and like part of you is like, you want this guy to get his revenge, but you also kind of know like this isn't going to bring this person peace. Like for 30 plus years, this is all they've been driven on. So like if they do get this revenge, they have nothing now. Like it's like kind of one of those things, but my God, it's so violent. It's so like, it is easily the most violent film that Eggers has made so far. It is also the most cast he's ever in the first shot. There's more people than both of his previous movies combined. Just like the king comes home and it's like 70 people in the kingdom, and you're just like, this is the biggest cast he's ever worked with. But it's all there. Like even a bunch of people had said like, oh, it's kind of more straightforward for him, and that is true, but it still gets fucking wacky. Like it is wacky. It's trippy. I had a really good time. If you love horses, there might be a couple horse deaths that are on camera that are pretty. I don't think they killed real horses.
You're gonna have trouble with the Northman.
I was a horse girl in high school.
I knew it. But then speaking of animals,
for the trigger warning.
Speaking of animals, for Weird Ass Movie Night, we watched a movie that I had not seen. I had purchased it at Creature Feature Weekend almost a year ago. And I was like, one day I will watch this with the Weird Ass Movie Night group. And that was a film called Spirit Animal. It was made for $1,000. And it's an homage to shot on video cinema from the 90s. So they collected and purchased as many old VHS cameras as they could to shoot this movie. And you can tell that in a lot of ways, you can tell that this took them years to make. And like case in point, there are at least 2 people in the movie who are trans. And with one of them, you can tell that they weren't transitioning for certain scenes, but were almost done their transitioning in other scenes. And since the movie was shot out of sequence, it kind of jumps back and forth.
Wow.
Like, so it's a little weird like
Spirit
that.
Animal 2019?
That's the one. And it is, we've talked about this on the show before, where like there is this thin line where if you're intentionally making a Sharknado or you're making a bad movie, there has to be sincerity with it. And what made this movie work where so many have failed is there are no jokes in this movie. Like it is a dumb, ridiculous concept, but there is not a single point where they wink at the camera and acknowledge that it's a dumb movie. Like they play it as straight and serious as any of those other cheapo shot on video movies are. The only noteworthy name in the entire film is that one of the characters is voiced by the actor who played the Killer Nerd in Killer Nerd and Bride of Killer Nerd
wow,
from American Splendor.
Yeah.
So
Yo,
Wow.
I'm gonna tell you right now. You said like notable and noteworthy. I'm not sure. I don't know what
he
the
was
fuck
on
you're
MTV
talking
a
about,
little
Matt.
bit, but yeah, he was a MTV
stretch.
correspondent
That's a
for a
stretch.
bit in the late 80s, early 90s.
That's so interesting. I'm so intrigued by that.
The gore was incredible. Like I was watching it
For
with my friends.
$1,000.
Yeah, I was watching with my friend Clore and listener of the show Eli, and there were parts where we're like, "How the fuck did they do this for $1,000?" Like, there's some really impressive. The only thing I can think of is that it was $1,000 because it feels like they're all young and fresh out of college, so maybe they were just reusing props that they had from like other things that they shot in college. But like, there's some pretty cool stop motion stuff in there, and it's a nice little homage. So if you can track down a copy of it, I do recommend it. And, we're running a little long, but let's go for the next email. Is kind of a short one, and it's from someone that we mentioned already, Tom.
Boo!
He
I'm
said,
kidding.
since Matt
I feel like
mentioned
this was set up because Tom loves Giallo so much.
No, this is just the way it fell. This was an email from June of 2021. He said, since Matt mentioned a possible email show not happening in response to a 2-year-old email I sent in, let me respond with a fuck you. You don't tell me what to do. I don't have a topic. So when someone asks you, I don't have a topic, but here's a question. So when someone asks you, what's your favorite movie? What is your knee-jerk response? It doesn't actually have to be your favorite. Just what is the first thing that pops up to your head when the question is pitched to you? Obviously, I saw this question before you guys, so I've had time to think about it, and I tend to say Clerks, I think, is usually the one that just comes to me, even though it's in the top 5. I don't think it's my favorite, but that's the one that comes out of my mouth the most.
I think that I might have mentioned it before because we had another email about an editor who edited Blue Velvet, and I had proclaimed that was sort of a knee-jerk reaction. I proclaimed that Blue Velvet was my favorite movie, and I do. I stand by that. I think that if a horror fan asks me what my favorite movie is, I say Night of the Living Dead. If anybody asks me what my favorite movie is, I say Blue Velvet, and I think that those are honest answers.
Because I think if someone asked me my favorite horror movie, my knee jerk would say Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Sure,
that's like my go-to.
Yeah. I think it's a particular type of company, but I also feel like I'm only in, not for anything, I'm only in like horror or non-horror company, or like not even non-horror, but just like horror or not company. And those are my answers.
All right, Scott.
I'm at a loss. I really don't know what my all-time favorite movie is. I don't even have a knee-jerk answer. Like, I have a half-sleeve.
You need clarification.
I have a half-sleeve Return of the Jedi tattoo. I mean, I watched that. That's pure comfort, but at the same time, like...
See, I was thinking you might say, like, Can't Hardly Wait. I feel like that's, like,
I mean, Can't Hardly Wait came to mind, too, but Can't Hardly Wait is super problematic. So
well, see, you're overthinking. It's just
I know,
knee jerk.
Matt, how long have we been podcasting?
I know.
Friends. I only overthink.
I know. I'm gonna say that's Can't Hardly Wait. I think that's the first thing that pops into your head when the question's asked, and then you start to overthink it after that.
Well, Return came to mind because of the tattoo. Yeah. So, I mean, I anybody that has a Can't Hardly Wait tattoo listening, email us.
All right. Well,
I'm gonna get one and just email you.
Eli, do not get a Can't Hardly Wait tattoo just so that we can talk about you on the show, buddy. I know that you have nothing to lose as far as your skin is concerned. You send me a fucking email about it or a text about it.
All right. Well, that was Red Queen Kills 7 Times as picked by Kyle. We'll be back with a movie that I picked that obviously is a massive step up in cinematic quality. So
you picked, but Kyle cheerleaded you on.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm like, go.
And I'm in the background like, no.
So stay tuned for what that is. Send us some emails at hmnpodcast@gmail.com. We'll read it on the air. And make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app. Tune in next week for even more Horror Movie Night.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network. You're listening to the Geekscape Network.